We now turn our attention to the Middle East, where we speak about the freed Israeli hostage and her first Instagram post. Romi Gonin's first Instagram post since her release from Hamas captivity has really captured the emotions of a nation. After being freed on Sunday, after spending over 430 days in captivity, Gonin shared a heartfelt message saying that there is life after death, alongside an image of herself embracing her mother, a moment she described as, well, surreal. Her gratitude was evident as she thanked the people of Israel, her family, friends, acknowledging that their prayers and strength helped guide her through the darkest days of her ordeal. But Gonin's message of hope was tempered with a call for action. As she celebrates her return, she reminded the world that there are 94 hostages that continue to remain in Gaza, fighting for their lives. Meanwhile, Israel's top military leadership is now grappling with the fallout from the catastrophic October 7 Hamas attack, which left 1,200 people dead and over 200 people were in fact captured. In a dramatic move on Tuesday, Israel Defense Forces Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Herzi and the head of the IDF Southern Command, Major General Finkelman, announced their resignation, citing their responsibility for their failures that led to the Hamas onslaught. This is, in fact, it comes with a deep sense of accountability. In his letter to the defense minister, the general acknowledged the military's failure on the 7th of October to protect Israeli citizens, a failure that remains with me every day. That's what he says in the letter, every hour, and will remain with me for the rest of my lives. It's important to note that the 7th of October Hamas attack has been the single largest attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Both Halevi and Finkelman are joining a growing list of high-ranking officials who have resigned in the wake of the attack, including top figures from the military intelligence and Gaza divisions. Let's get in my colleague Mohammed Ghazali to really talk to us about it's a moving story and just tells how it's like to be in captivity for about 430 days. But Ghazali, what I want to speak to you about is finally one is seeing some major fallout of the attack as far as Israeli leadership is going. You've been working up the phones, you've been talking to your sources. What are they telling you about the Israeli political, military landscape looking like?
See, the political and military landscape or the division was very wide since the war broke out, because initially in the response to the Hamas attack on October 7, even the decision when to launch an attack, whether it should be a ground invasion, whether the forces should stay in Gaza, it was very out in the open that the military leadership as well as the political leadership had huge differences. Even with Mr. Netanyahu, his right-wing cabinet colleagues pushed him till the end to ensure that Gaza is occupied or reoccupied. The Gaza campaign also went on throughout this war. Settlements had to be built into Gaza was the main focus of these cabinet colleagues of Mr. Netanyahu, while the army chief or say the IDF chief there or the defense establishment people and experts in think tanks over there kept suggesting the government that occupying Gaza or staying in Gaza will only keep to sort of inflate this entire conflict for far more days than what it was anticipated initially. It was also believed that Mr. Antony Blinken, the previous Secretary of State from the United States, as well as his counterparts in Israel and other countries kept suggesting that IDF has not been able to inflict that kind of damage onto Hamas, which was expected earlier, which was one of the war objectives. The two major war objectives which Mr. Netanyahu outlined immediately after the attack was to dismantle Hamas, to ensure that it doesn't come back into power, and second was to retrieve all the hostages from Gaza Strip, which the war has not achieved because the ceasefire came through the external interference or mediation from Qatar, Egypt and other countries. So this was always the baseline of this conflict between the political class and the military class, and IDF chief has time and again said that somebody will have to take responsibility. And why Mr. Netanyahu didn't take or resign from the cabinet or from his post was because we have seen in the past that how Golda Meir, one of the very remarkable prime ministers of Israel, saw what happened after 1973, the war with Egypt, how she had to face consequences in the elections. And that is exactly what Mr. Netanyahu is also believing, because he's already facing those corruption charges, the trial of which is still ongoing. And we saw that before the outbreak of the war, that how long-time protest was going on in Israel to halt that particular law which could have paused any kind of trial against Mr. Netanyahu in the corruption charges. So overall, right now, on one side in the Israeli society, obviously there is a lot of optimism that these three hostages have come back home. The ceasefire deal brokered by Israel and its allies have worked out. Now, all eyes are on next Saturday or the coming Saturday, when it is expected that more hostages will be released by Hamas.
And Ghazali, I wanted to speak to you about the other part, which is that, this is a phased transition that the region is seeing. Talk to us about the fact that now that there's Donald Trump in office, his administration, it has a different view about the entire situation. How will that impact Israeli political landscape, and will that have an impact on Benjamin Netanyahu, his government, as well as the military?
See, except Jimmy Carter as the United States president, all the presidents after him or before him have been very supportive of Israel. Even Mr. Biden, Mr. Trump, Mr. Obama, they have all been very supportive of Israel's policies in its own territory as well as in the occupied territory. And as rightly you pointed out, Mr. Trump was the first one to sort of declare Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, while Jerusalem is a disputed territory as per the international law. Second, he was the one who was the architect of Abraham Accords to bring more Arab countries, or to sort of bring them on the table to recognize Israel as a state, establish diplomatic relations. And then he was the one who also spoke about bringing two major players, Israel and Saudi Arabia, or to bring the normalization deal, or to at least speak about it. Now, in this particular term, what we heard that how Mr. Trump actually forced down this ceasefire deal onto the Netanyahu government, asking him to accept it anyway. But the Israeli government there, or the Israeli diplomats there, believe that perhaps in exchange of this Israeli government accepting the ceasefire deal, maybe Mr. Trump will allow more settler movement, or allow more settlements to be built in the occupied territory. And exactly he has hinted that by lifting sanctions on those settlers who were brought under sanction, or those who were put under sanction by the previous Biden administration. So in some way or the other, Mr. Netanyahu also believes that as per all the previous US presidents, Mr. Trump will be more friendly. He will take decisions which will be more favorable for the state of Israel.
All right, Mohammed Ghazali, appreciate you taking out the time for a very important story.